Are the Dodgers ruining baseball? Is baseball really broken? Do we have a lockout coming after 2026? That's all what's coming up next. We talk about it here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. What up, everyone? Welcome in to the podcast, DNVR Rockies, live from the studio here. Christian Saez, Big Drive Spence. Happy Friday, everyone. And we got a lot to talk about today. It's going to be a good show, and it's the second time in the last 2 weeks that I've had this conversation of, is a specific sport broken? Is a specific sport dying? I talked with Brendan Vogt, one of our Nuggets guys, the other day on TDSP about, is the NBA dying, all their ratings and viewership going down, all that kind of stuff. That's a good conversation that we got into. But unfortunately, we now have to have this conversation with baseball because the Dodgers have created this conversation and this topic about what are we doing? Are we, if you're a Dodger fan, obviously you're pretty happy about this, but like the rest of baseball seems pretty upset about this. We do have a collective bargaining agreement coming up after 2026. There's conversation now of a MLB lockout that could be looming ahead. There's a lot to unpack in today's show. I'm glad to have you on.
Glad to be on. Friday talking Rockies.
Friday talking Rockies. And actually, surprisingly, not a lot of Rockies stuff to talk about. There will be some stuff that we have. And yes, to answer a little Kodak in the chat, the title's clickbait. Like, baseball isn't broken. But I do think there's things that need to be addressed. And that's what we're here to unpack. And so specifically, we'll start by talking about the Dodgers because, the Dodgers are what started this whole conversation. It's what's gotten people all up in arms. So before I share my insight on this, I want to kind of share with you a vibe that people are feeling outside of just Colorado, because if you turn on the radio in other prominent sports markets, baseball markets specifically, people are equally as upset, if not more upset than we are here in Colorado about what the Dodgers are doing. So Riley, if you want to pull up this clip, I was listening to some radio clips from KNBR. They cover the San Francisco Giants, also one of our NL West teams, and Dwayne Kuiper, one of the broadcasters for the Giants, had this to say about the Dodgers.
And Kipe, you mentioned some of those storylines down in LA right now surrounding the Dodgers and the offseason that they've had after winning the World Series, signed Blake Snell, signed Roki Sasaki, also Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates this past weekend also. And now the biggest conversation in baseball is whether or not the Dodgers are ruining the sport of baseball.
Well, let me answer it this way, Marcus. I've taken a firm stance on this. I think the voters really did a heck of a job on who they chose for the Hall of Fame.
Okay. He asked you about the Dodgers, and the answer is the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, Murph, I don't have to talk about the Dodgers.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, I got you. There's a strategy.
I'm sick of them. Yeah. I am. I haven't even seen any of them. They're broadcasters, they're teams. You know what? I'm sick of it. I really am. And I think I'm playing into their hands if I talk about them. So I'm not.
Firm line in the sand.
Yeah, well, we're going to play into their hands here, and we're going to talk about it. And I think it's interesting because there are people on both sides of the coin here. You obviously have people like, Kipe, who's pretty upset, and I tend to fall under that category as well. But you have people like Lil Kodak was saying in the chat. They're making baseball better, right? The Dodgers are a big market. They're trying to be competitive. They're signing anyone they can. So I want to get your take on this. What do you feel initially, just as a fan of baseball? How do you feel like this has changed your perspective as you head into 2025?
Well, looking at it from just a baseball fan, the baseball fan in me, remove my allegiance to the Colorado Rockies, however sick it may be, it's actually kind of interesting because you see the last couple of years you've had like the Golden State Warriors be a dynasty in a sport. You've had, back in the day, it was the Spurs. You've had the Kansas City Chiefs who are bordering on their 2 wins away from their 3rd straight Super Bowl. And I think what makes that interesting about each individual sport, and especially baseball now, the Dodgers look like they're a dynasty on paper. And that's the beauty of baseball, is the fact that every year you're going to have a team that spends more and is the clear favorite for the World Series. And then most of the time it doesn't actually work out. Like they finally won the World Series last year as, the COVID World Series, whatever. But like as a team that was supposed to win it. Now they're going to go into this year. They've signed, 2 more all-star relievers. They've signed a guy from Japan who's just incredible, what we think is going to be incredible in the MLB.
Yeah.
And they've created this dynasty. I'm going to say it because that's what they're trying to create.
It totally is. Yeah.
And what that does is that unites the other 29 teams and the other 29 cities. It's like you see all those graphics this weekend, especially. Everybody's sick of the Chiefs, right? But everybody talks about the Chiefs and everybody else bonds together. And it's like the little graphic of America that's cheering for the Chiefs this weekend,
and
the
then the
little
country.
graphic of America that's cheering for not the Chiefs. And
Yeah.
and that's what the Dodgers are creating. So the non-Rockies fan, baseball fan in me thinks this is interesting for baseball in terms of if you're trying to create somebody that everybody hates, the other teams, somebody else is going to play them in the World Series if they make it that far. And everybody else will be on that side and want to see kind of Goliath go down.
That's the quickest way to get the world to root for you, is if you're the team that happens to play the Dodgers in the World Series. I mean, unless you're the Yankees, like we're rooting for you. If it was the Guardians versus, the Dodgers, like we're rooting for them. Here's the interesting part for me that I think will change how we feel about this one way or the other. If the Dodgers win a World Series in 2025, this will obviously affect how we discuss this moving forward. Owners are going to get more upset. People are going to get, non-Dodger fans are going to start freaking out. All of that stuff is going to be true. It's going to get louder. The noise will get louder. If the Dodgers don't win a World Series, and let's say they don't even make the World Series in 2025, then I think people are going to relax a little bit. They're going to say, you know what, baseball is the ultimate equalizer, and and maybe it does create a villain in which people can rally around. I actually want to take this quote from Jeff Passan. I was reading one of his recent articles, and he says, quote, "Most worrisome is the rhetoric that fans are done with the game, that what LA is doing is unfair, that the financial imbalance ruins the sport. A villain around which people can rally is tolerable, but an unbeaten monolith is not." So that plays into my point of, if the Dodgers win a World Series, then people are this rhetoric is going to increase. People are going to continue to be more and more upset. But if they don't win a World Series next year, this I think is going to fade into just, the shadows.
I think you're dead on. And I think let's be clear that baseball is a very different sport than the other major 3, I should say, in America. And the fact that there's no salary cap is insane, but we have to get past that. Like, that's just one of those things you just deal with. And there was a couple comments here, like people should be upset, but not at the Dodgers. And that, while that is true, there's straight up teams like, yes, they're all the owners are rich, but it's not just that. It's not just the money. It's the deferred payments, number one. Mm-hmm. It's obviously the money is the end all be all, but number two, like and what I've heard from multiple sources on, not like I have inside sources, but just on Twitter, different MLB people, is that the Dodgers offer just as much as some of these other teams, but they're creating this, like the other teams have no chance to sign these guys. And like the Blue Jays, for instance, are actually shelling out a good amount of money and wanted to shell out that money for Sasaki, but he chose the Dodgers. And I don't necessarily blame Sasaki for that, and I don't necessarily blame the Dodgers for that, but that doesn't mean that it's not shitty. Doesn't mean it's not shitty for everyone else, because that's a team that like everybody now wants to go to. And when I go back to like the Warriors, when they got Kevin Durant, they'd already won multiple titles, and they get the best player in the world to come to their team. Like, that's what they're creating. And I agree with you. Once we get to the World Series, fast forward to October of 25, and we're sitting here on a Friday talking about the World Series, and they don't win it, everyone will be like, that's what you get for, because the Mets are relatively doing the same thing. They're just not getting all the high-level players, and they don't have Shohei.
Well, they put all their eggs in one basket, and that was Juan Soto. I mean, you spend $756 million. That's a lot of money, but you did it on one guy. So it's not as, the Dodgers feel like they're doing it on anyone who comes available. It's like, oh, there's that free agent that's really freaking good. We're going to go sign him for more than what anyone else would. Right,
and the crazy thing about baseball, too, which makes it so fun, is that there's no real fits in baseball. Like if in another sport, if you sign a player that's great and all world. It's like, how does he fit with this team? In baseball, they're going up and hitting against the same pitchers, no matter, they're in the box by themselves. They're playing in the field by themselves. Like, yes, you have to have some team chemistry, catcher, pitcher, little things like that. But overall, there's no team fit. Like, there's no wondering if, I mean, the Dodgers have a guy that's going to pitch in the 6th inning that could close for like 2019, 2018. And that's where, you know, there's no need for a fit. So it makes it harder to defend against things like this when they just go out and get reliever 1 on the market, reliever 2 on the market, bat 1 on the market, bat 2 on the market. Best Japanese pitcher comes to, like, you can't stop that.
Major League Baseball is going to have this issue on their hands come the All-Star break about, like, limiting how many of the Dodgers are allowed to play in the All-Star game. Otherwise, it's going to be an entire team of the Dodgers if all the players are playing to what their potential is. I mean, you've got a team full of All-Stars. You go on MLB, you know, go play, you know, go plug in your video games and start playing MLB 2K or whatever, and you're just, or MLB The Show, I'm just thinking NBA, and you're sitting there creating your own team. That's what the Dodgers are doing. You're taking all the best teams, all the best guys, and just putting them all on your team. Now, I do want to talk about deferred payments, though, because deferred payments keeps coming up as like the biggest frustration for everyone, right? Because you feel like, okay, you know, it feels like your kid is running around with your credit card, just spending just an obscene amount of money, getting all the toys they could possibly want, and one day that bill is going to come due. And I will, hand on my heart, admit that I've gone on this show before and criticized the Dodgers for pretty much running rampant with their credit card and saying, you know, you can't make that equivalent to the Rockies. Like, the Rockies cannot compete in the same way or replicate what the Dodgers are doing. But I do think what the Dodgers are doing is interesting because there is a lot of fine print in the CBA, the current CBA, that has to do with deferred money and how teams can spend that. So, for example, within 2 years of agreeing to a contract with deferred money, which the Dodgers have $800 million plus in deferred money on the books this year. Within 2 years of agreeing to a contract with deferred money, teams must place cash in an account to cover future payments and show statements annually to the league. And all of that is in the collective bargaining agreement. So basically what they're saying is like, hey, yes, you can pay this person later, but you have to still have the money today. And so that's where I think it's really unique what the Dodgers are doing, is that it's not even really like they're putting money on a credit card. They're just kind of paying with a payment plan, almost like a really extended payment plan. And they're banking on this idea that the dollar tomorrow is not going to be worth as much as a dollar is today. You know, when you're talking about inflation, you're talking about math, you're talking about all that kind of stuff. So I don't blame the Dodgers for doing that. It's just not something that other teams have the market to be able to accomplish as easily.
Yeah, and talking about, it's just like you go into buy a new car, and a Toyota, for instance, and you look at the payments and you're like, oh, do I want to spread this over 2 years? Whoa, that monthly payment is not something I can afford. Spread it over 5 years, boom, there we go. And that's
15-year mortgage, or 30-year mortgage.
Exactly. And so the deferral of the payments is just another, like, they're already signing these players and probably can already afford them, but then the deferral of payments just makes it like that much more gut-wrenching of like, God, what can we do to stop this?
Yeah.
And did you see, you may have talked about it on the pod already, but there was a graphic on Twitter, it was like probably a week ago, and it showed the relative percentage of what MLB teams make to what they spend in salary.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, so that was really interesting to see too, is like, obviously you have teams, because there's some comments about, you know, cap floor, and I agree with, there should be a cap floor, because we're pissed at our owners. Yes, let's get over that for a minute. Like, if you're a Rays fan, you know, they're spending like, I don't know, I can't recall off the top of my head, but they're spending the lowest percentage of their actual revenue, or close to the lowest, like 33% of their actual revenue. So all these teams that make a good amount but then don't decide to spend it, like, you can't be mad at the Dodgers for deciding to spend the revenue, but then that also cycles into the unfairness of, well, they have the LA TV money that's just different than everybody else's, and it's just a constant cycle of, is it unfair? Well, they have the money, but it's unfair. Like,
it's one of those things that it's almost like a catch-22. Like, it's unfair, and also I don't blame them for doing it, right? Like no one, right? Like no one is sitting there saying if we weren't in the Dodgers' shoes, we would do anything different. What the Dodgers are doing is the best thing they could possibly doing for their franchise and their team. But I think it speaks to the imbalance of baseball. Now, we're talking about deferred money and all that kind of stuff and why, from an inflation standpoint. You also have to remember, this is California we're talking about. The Dodgers play in California. California has the highest state taxes across the country, if I'm correct in that. And so there's a huge loophole that players can use basically in the California state tax system by avoiding paying California state taxes on all of the money that you're making because you're deferring it down the road. Shohei Ohtani could save over $100 million by not paying California state taxes because he's deferring money down the road and being able to pay those taxes in his residence where he lives 10 years from now. So there's all of that kind of stuff that goes on. The bigger point is the fact that over the last 411 days, the Dodgers have signed over $1.778 billion, and 870 plus million of that is deferred. Their luxury tax penalties, which I saw in the chat earlier, their luxury tax penalty for 2025 is $120 million, which is more than the payroll of 10 teams. That's what pisses people off. Like, that's where the anger comes, is that, like you said, other teams aren't spending enough. Other teams can't spend enough to do that, to replicate what that is. And the Dodgers feel like they're just running away with it. Now, to circle all the way back to what we were saying in the beginning, I think the biggest, answer that we're going to receive on whether or not baseball is broken or baseball is, in a place that needs to be fixed is whether or not the Dodgers win the World Series, because that's going to be the answer to all of these things. Now, before we take a break, because I want to talk about the lockout that happened in 1994, draw some comparatives and some similarities between, some of the conversations then and now. I leave you with this quote from, again, Jeff Passan, who has a great article on all of this. But I think it speaks to what a lot of us are feeling right now across baseball. He said, quote, "The greatest drug in sports fandom is belief, and right now belief in baseball is waning." So mull that over a little bit. I know how we feel as Rockies fans, and that doesn't have to just do with the Dodgers. There's some other issues that we have dealt with over the years. But after the break, though, I do want to talk about the lockout and potential for a lockout, some of the conversation that's happened around that. But before we do, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Coors Light, because Coors Light, the official beer of the Rockies, of DNVR, of pretty much Colorado. I mean, there's no denying Coors Light is the beer of Colorado, and there's a reason for that. It's good vibes. It's a good time. I always enjoy finishing up my Friday with a nice Coors Light downstairs at the DNVR bar. There's going to be some basketball on this afternoon. I know we're getting ready for the Super Bowl party that's not too far away, going to be coming up here at the DNVR bar as well. But whether you're at the DNVR bar or in your house, out at another bar with friends, or even going to be hanging out at Rockies Fest on Saturday, Coors Light is the beer you need to enjoy, whether it's snowing or not. Enjoy some Coors Light. Embrace that chill mindset. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instant Cart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado.
We drank a store out of their entire stock of Coors Light this past weekend. I was at a bachelor party in Arizona.
In Arizona.
We had 30 racks stacked. I think we, no joke, in 4 days finished 30 racks.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's that's impressive.
Yeah,
it was
impressive. A lot. It was like one of those, and you wake up and you're like, I'm not drinking again. You see a Coors Light and you're like, oh, it'll make me feel better. Yeah. So here I go again.
It's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. And you can drink a lot of Coors Lights. Coors Lights is a fun beer to pack in for a while. Also want to give a shout out to our friends over at Mando. Mando is a men's deodorant brand that's hyper-focused on keeping every aspect of a dude's body smelling fresh and clean. I know I appreciate that because, look, it's the middle of winter, sure, but I still go out. I'm still going to the gym as many times as I can throughout the week. I'm still taking my dogs out on runs in the morning, whatever. Like, by the end of the day, I'm feeling a little funky, right? And you got to have deodorant that can take care of it no matter what, everywhere on your body. They advertise saying, your pits, your belly button, balls, butt cracks, grundles. Word of the day, grundle.
I love that.
That's a new one, man.
You never heard that?
I never heard of grundle.
Oh my God.
Dude. I saw that and I'm like, that's good. That's a good one.
Grundle's a good one.
Grundle's the word of the day. Yeah, it's the It's the word of the day for me. So I learned something new every day. Shout out to Mando for that. They'll take care of your body sweat, though, your body odor. It's a good thing. And they've got great smells, too. Bourbon Leather, Cloverwoods, Mount Fuji, Pro Sport. It is solid. So pick up one of their starter packs. They're perfect for new customers. Comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping as a special offer for our listeners. New customers can get $5 off your starter pack with our exclusive code that equates to over 40% off on your starter pack. Use code DNVR at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. All right, back here on the DNVR Rockies podcast, Christian Saez, Big Drive Spence, hanging out with you guys on this Friday afternoon, and we're talking MLB Lockout because that's kind of been the scariest part of all of these conversations. Scary feels like such a soft word, but like the most alarming part of these conversations is like, is there going to be a lockout in 2026, 2027? We saw it in 1994 when Major League Baseball canceled the playoffs in the World Series because of the salary cap, the argument around should there be a salary cap. Well, now salary cap, that conversation is coming back up on should there be a salary cap in Major League Baseball. And the discussion now has shifted towards how do we avoid a lockout? And can I just say, before all of this conversation goes in, a lockout would be the worst possible thing that could ever happen to baseball right now. I mean, you've got multiple years of increased revenue, increased viewership. Fans are back in the stands. Like, people are hyped about baseball. Baseball is a growing sport right now. If you shit on our parade and cancel half of a season, part of a season, whatever, I'm done, man. Like, that's going to piss me off above all else.
Yeah, and I agree with that statement in a vacuum. Do you think, though, that if there does end up being a lockout and we miss baseball for an entire year, but some things get figured out going into the following season, that it's almost like the rebuild of a team where you trade away all your stars, you break it down to the nubs, and you try to rebuild it back up? Like, do you think baseball could come back stronger in 27, or would it be 28 if there was a lockout? Now, I'm not saying that a whole year is just nothing. Like, that'd be a ridiculous. You'd lose a lot of fans. You'd lose a lot of money. Obviously revenue, TV money. You'd lose. Some people that are already on the fence would probably just be like, oh, well, now I was already watching, we'll talk about the Rockies. I was already watching 30 to 40 Rockies games a year. Now I'm watching 0 because they're not even playing. There's no spring training. Arizona, Florida, they lose all that revenue. But it could make the product better moving forward and for the generations moving forward. Not saying it could be good, but I'm just like curious of your thoughts on if it's worth potentially making a better product in the future. Because you can never guarantee, even a rebuild, that you'll come back better. But the point is to break it down to the very bottom, fix the problems, get rid of all the problems, and then reset yourself.
Here's the thing on that. Major League Baseball, the agents, the players, anyone associated with the money aspect of baseball is making way too much money right now with the way it is for them to turn around and go backwards, I think. Now, are there adjustments that can be made? Absolutely. But I almost feel like we're too far gone at this point, because if you are an agent making 5% of contracts you're signing and your players are signing $800 million contracts, you are fighting through hell on earth to make sure that you can keep Major League Baseball the way it is. Keep your players making $800 million plus contracts. Keep the salary cap off the table. If you are players, talking about this from the players' union perspective, that says, hey, we have the potential to continue making $600 to $800 billion deals, why would you want to turn that around? The players are not going to want to lose out on that potential money. So I think that we're too far gone at this point to introduce a salary cap. Now, a salary floor is a different situation, because now you're incentivizing teams through consequences, penalties, fines, all of that kind of stuff, to make sure that you are, rising to the occasion. Make sure that the Rockies are meeting a specific amount of money that they have to spend each year so that they are, in a competitive window with some of these other teams. And I go back to what everyone is saying, throughout all of this, is that Major League Baseball is the ultimate equalizer. The parity in baseball goes, I think, and transcends, I think, all sports. baseball, if your pitcher has a bad outing, even though he's the best pitcher in baseball and he's getting shelled that day, your team loses that game, even if you're playing the Chicago White Sox on any given day. That's just the reality of baseball. So I understand where you're coming from. I understand this idea that like maybe Major League Baseball can fix some things if they were to go into a lockout. I just think the bigger issues we're too far gone on, and I think you can find a way to fix some of those smaller things, introduce a salary floor or some of those other aspects in non-lockout capacity.
Yeah, and it's my mind's kind of in a pretzel right now. I'm trying to wrap my head around both, because if there's a lockout, obviously there's a non-agreement between owners and players, and both of them are basically saying, if there's not a lockout, which I hope there isn't, but they're both basically saying like, we care what the Dodgers are doing, and it's frustrating, and they are spending more than everybody else, and they're winning. But at the same time, us as players, we don't want to miss a year. We want to continue to make more money. The owners are like, we don't want to miss a year. We want to continue to make more money. And, in hopes that for the players, it's directly affecting, like they're not as rich as these owners. Obviously, it affects the owners, but the owners are basically investing in the players to make them more money down the road. So it's all about the money on both sides of it. But if they don't care enough, and I'm not saying they should, but if they don't care enough to say we have to put a stop to this, and the only way to do that is for a lockout, then basically they're just running their businesses as individual entities that don't really care if they win the World Series or not. They do, and every owner does, and every player wants to win the World Series, but they're like, we got it too good right here.
Yeah.
Making enough money where we are, whether it's the Rays spending very little and making less, but all the owners seem to be in a decent spot with where they are. That's why they get to choose, do I need to spend this or do I need to spend this? And so everybody's in a good spot money-wise, but in terms of the actual competition on the field, that'll never change the way it's going.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always go back to in terms of, we're talking about, is baseball dying in the sport in general? I actually give the MLB a lot of credit for what they've done inside the lines in terms of the rule changes and the DH and the pitch clock and things to try to make the actual game itself better. Now, the lockout and the CBA are everything outside the lines. Those guys in the dugouts, the guys in the owners' boxes. So it's a completely different world. But it would be sad to see a lockout, considering the MLB itself has, whether you like the rules or not, they are trying to do things to make the game itself better.
And they're growing. I mean, they're moving forward. They're, like I said, Major League Baseball, their revenue's going up. They're the third, most profitable sports franchise in all of sports, and they're right below the NBA. Baseball, I think, is moving in the right direction. I saw a comment earlier where I don't remember who it was in the Twitter chat, but they were saying that Bud Black had alluded to something like that when he was talking on Drew Goodman's podcast, and I didn't hear this. I didn't hear this comment on Drew Goodman's podcast, but I am going to get to talk to Bud Black on Saturday, so tomorrow. We're going to get to have a conversation with him at FanFest as part of their media availability. And that's one of the top things I want to ask him. And I'm sure he's going to get pissed about it just because everyone hates talking about the Dodgers right now, as we showed you at the beginning of the show. But it's the reality of where we are. Like, what are your thoughts on a possible lockout and what that would do to baseball? And how do you, as a manager of a team that's in a position right now on the opposite end, you're not spending a lot of money, you're not buying new prospects or new free agents, and you're not doing all of that. Like, how do we as the Rockies feel about that on that side? Because it's easy to look at it from the Dodgers perspective, and I'm seeing a ton of people in the chat just saying like the Dodgers are doing the right thing. They're growing the game of baseball, and I don't disagree with you on that. I don't disagree that the Dodgers are growing baseball. The entire country of Japan and beyond is completely tuned into Dodgers games and what they're doing. When the Dodgers show up to Coors Field, I was telling you this, the media like frenzy was as if the Rockies were in the World Series. I was bunched in the press box, shoulder to shoulder with just tons of Japanese media, MLB media, MLB.com, MLB Network. I mean, just the hype is there, and that's good for baseball. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not good for baseball, but you have to make sure that they're there's competition, right? You have to make sure that other teams are able to compete within those lines. And that's where I think this conversation comes up, is that what are the teams like the Rockies going to do to be competitive again? Will the Rockies ever be competitive again with the Dodgers? Or are we set on just competing for a wild card from here on out and hoping that at some point we have to go through the Dodgers to get to the World Series? And if that's the way it is, fine. I'm not if the Rockies make it to a wild card, I am not complaining at all. At all.
You'll see me streaking through 20th and Blake.
That'd be a miracle, man. But that's where the conversation has to go, is how do teams like the Rockies, the White Sox, the A's, even some of the mid-market teams like the Giants, how do you end up competing with the Dodgers? I want to ask the question. We got to take a break, though. I want to ask the question, though, after the break. Is there a bigger gap in any sport currently, football, basketball, hockey, whatever, between the talent level of the Dodgers and the Rockies in the same division? Is there any divisional gap that's bigger than the talent between the Dodgers and the Rockies on paper? Think about that, mull that over a little bit. We'll touch on that after the break. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Toyota. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR and the official vehicle of pretty much this show, I would say, as well. Not only on paper, but also Spence and I both drive Toyotas. We have forever. You've got yourself a brand new Tundra, it is, right?
It is. I love it.
It's sexy.
Incredible.
I love it. All blacked out. Do you have a lift on it a little bit or no?
It didn't. I didn't lift it myself. It might have come.
It looks a little.
Yeah,
it might come with a stock lift.
It's a little higher.
I love it. I love it. Mine isn't nearly as flashy, but it is doing the job. I got the 2007 Toyota Highlander. And look, like I said, whether you're going, new Toyota Tundra like Spence has, all blacked out, just looking amazing, or going with the more traditional Toyota Highlander 2007 all-wheel drive. You can't go wrong. There's no bad options when it comes to Toyota. I've got 250,000 miles on my Toyota, and it's still crushing it. Spence is loving his new Toyota. I know I'm in the market to get a new Toyota at some point here soon, but I'm gonna use my Toyota until the wheels are falling off. And the way I've been driving it, man, it's still hanging in there for me. And it's been an amazing car. I cannot say enough about how great of a car Toyota is. Whether you're going RAV4, Highlander, 4Runner, Camry, even if you want to go some of the smaller sedan size. Either way, visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson's Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. Also the official vehicle of Charlie Blackmon, because he was gifted a Toyota at the end of last season. Going to be talking to him at FanFest as well. Got to give a shout out to our friends over at Shady Rays, though. Shady Rays, they are the best sunglasses on the market. My personal favorite. I know Spence has them. Do you still wear the sunglasses when you do your shows?
Yes, every show.
It's
my thing.
It's your vibe.
What's
Very
funny,
PFT of you.
Yeah, is today. I don't like the look of my own eyes, especially in the camera. And
a little self-conscious of your ojos?
Definitely.
Okay.
And today I'm also self-conscious of my hair. And today I was not going to wear a hat to work, and then I was like, oh, I'm on the Rocky show. I need a hat because these lights, just right on the top of my dome. That's one reason I wear the Shady Rays. But number two, it's because I need to wear a hat and the sunglasses because that's my comfortable spot. I don't need anybody I don't need it shining up behind me.
It's just a glowing orb sitting. Yeah, I get it. I get you. I will say I had a migraine a couple months ago when I was doing one of the shows, and I put on Shady Rays for the end of the show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just so nice not staring into the lights for a second and having some good polarized glasses to take care of your eyes, and they truly are great. Polarized sunglasses, you can get them polarized or non-polarized. Either way, they look good, they feel good, they're affordable, and you can get a good deal if you go to DNVR. If you use code DNVR, I should say, by going to shadyrays.com, using that code DNVR, 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us in the chat. Shout out to Felix, Rockies Nation. Can't wait for baseball to start. We get a little taste of that, although it's not going to be baseball. Taste of that tomorrow, FanFest. It's going to be snowing, which is miserable. But besides that, it's going to be fun. And I'm excited from the media standpoint. I get to talk to Charlie Blackmon. I get to talk to Bud Black. I get to talk to, there's a list of 10 dudes that I get to talk to, players, coaches. Bill Schmidt's going to be talking. I'm sure he'll get some feisty questions from the media about, this offseason. It's going to be fun. I'm excited. So I'll be putting out some articles. I've been kind of quiet on the article front just because there's not a lot to talk about right now. And I also was kind of starting a new job doing some sales stuff with DNVR. It's been fun, but I'm excited to get back into baseball. We got a month till spring training. I'm pumped, dude.
I was like, we're on the countdown of X days till pitchers and catchers report, which is like
a couple weeks.
Yeah, less than 3-4 weeks. And then spring training starts. And I'm a sucker for spring training games. I just am, like when they're on TV, because I remember when I was a kid, I was sick one day and it was like mid-March and I was like, there's nothing to watch during the day. And I just started watching all these spring training games I was home for like 3 or 4 days sick and just doing nothing but watching spring training games, trying to look up the players, see who's actually on rosters and not. But spring training it's a great time to go down to Arizona.
It is incredible. It totally is. I will say, I don't have this to show you guys, but on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, the Rockies posted their 2025 non-roster invitees to spring training. I think it was a total of 13 guys. You can go on there and look it up. It's on their website. It's also on social media everywhere. But some guys I'm excited to see this spring. Chase Dollander. I'm hoping he's the next Paul Skenes, right? I'm hoping he's the next stud that the Rockies can pull out there. Sean Sullivan, Carson Palmquist, another couple of pitchers that I'm looking at. Jeffrey Yan in the mix there. I'm just pumped to see what he looks like in a Rockies uniform. His energy, like if he's jumping after he's striking out dudes in spring training, like I'm excited to see him. Kyle Karros, MVP, minor league MVP last year for High A with the Spokane Indians. Like it's going to be fun, man. I'm excited. They've got a lot of prospects. And look, the reality is the Rockies aren't expecting to go to the postseason this year. You're not expecting to go to a World Series, but you're expecting guys that are on that list to show up and build. And I had someone comment and say, hey, are we gonna lose 85 games or less this year? I'm like, dude, if we lose less than 85 games this year, that's a step in the right direction to me. You go to back-to-back 100-loss seasons for the Rockies, and then you can turn around and improve on that in the toughest division in the history of baseball, in my opinion, in the NL West and what it is today. Like 85 losses or less is fine. That's a step in the right direction. And I hate that feels so negative, but I just need the Rockies to be moving forward, and it's going to come down to a lot of these prospects we see.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys and the thing I love about spring training too is baseball, it's not as prominent because even if you have a great spring, they kind of have you slotted in an area and you can obviously outperform that, start with the major league team. You kind of know the guys that are going to be on the major league roster, but there's always some surprises, and those surprises turn into exciting storylines for the season. Or when you have a team that's lost 100 games 2 years in a row, you look for diamonds in the rough. And there's a lot of them with the Rockies and Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar. But are there other guys that, does Dollander have such a great spring that he maybe starts in AAA? Maybe gets some starts when May, June rolls around. Like, I think those are the things that as Rockies fans, when you can't cling on to the entire team's success, there's going to be players that will ideally contribute to the success of the team going forward, and those are the guys to look out for.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. And I keep hearing that is Chase Dollander going to be on the big league squad when the season rolls around? And the reality is no. I think the Rockies are going to probably preserve his rookie status, and also you have to remember they signed all of their starters to or have their starters within contract or re-signed their starters like Gomber, Feltner, that kind of stuff. So they've committed to the starting pitchers as they are today. I think the bullpen is what we're going to see shifting a lot more consistently. Maybe some infield movement as well at the second base spot, depending on how Tyro Estrada's doing. But either way, it's going to be fun. Excited to watch that. And look, I know the Rockies, like I said, it feels hard to hype them up a lot when we're doing a show talking about the Dodgers and how just insane and how much of a juggernaut the Dodgers are. But there are still reasons to be excited if you're a Rockies fan. And I'm just excited for baseball to be back. But with that in mind, I asked the question before the break, so I'll give us a chance to answer. Is there a bigger talent gap in any sport division across any sport between the Dodgers and the Rockies? Because again, you're looking at a team with the Rockies who have back-to-back 100-loss seasons. Yes, they have some good dudes. Brenton Doyle, I'm not, discounting that, but the reality is the Dodgers are one of the most talented teams on paper that you could argue back in the Yankees, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig era. We're talking unprecedented. Every single guy on that team could be an all-star in any given year. Is there a bigger gap in any division that you can think of across any sport?
No, and I was trying to go through just some hometown team divisions. Like you look at the Raiders versus the Chiefs,
Yeah,
and the Chiefs are just a great team, but
Yeah.
there's the talent level is in the NFL especially is not all that different. It's scheme, it's all this other stuff, but you look at the ML or NBA and the great teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder right now are head and heels above a lot of other teams, but there's still teams that can compete with them night to night. Not that people won't compete with the Dodgers; they're not going 162-0, but I think the talent gap, looking at it in just that vacuum take is I don't think there's because they're
At least on paper.
As much as I love these guys on paper, Brenton Doyle and maybe Tovar with the Dodgers shortstop who was the NLCS MVP, maybe one of their weaker links on that starting roster. Maybe Tovar starts for the Dodgers and maybe Brenton Doyle starts for the Dodgers, and that's where it ends.
Yeah, that is insane to think think
I'm not confident
There's not a single
any
pitcher that would be
even
in there.
cracks the rotation.
Seth Halverson might, if he as a rookie, he might get some looks.
Yes.
As a rookie to fit it. But we were talking about this before the show started. Like, it's crazy to me that the Dodgers have 6 dudes in their bullpen that could be a legitimate closer on every single other team. I'm talking every team, no matter how talented those teams are across Major League Baseball. Yeah. And they have 6 of them. It's who's going to be the Dodgers closest this year? I don't know. Take your pick out of any of the All-Stars that throw 110 miles an hour with a devastating splitter. It's
Right.
what do you expect?
Do you think there's a little off track here, but do you think there's between the players there's obviously iron sharpens iron. You hear that all the time. The better when you're competing against the best players, you're going to make you better. But do you think there's any of the if the money, take the money out of it, do you think those relievers that just signed with the Dodgers, do you think they sign with the Dodgers if the money's not crazy and deferred and all this other great, and you're playing for a winner to go and be a closer on a team and go, oh yeah, I'll be a 6th inning guy, a 7th inning guy.
Totally.
I feel part of me would be as those guys, which I've never made it to relatively even close to that level, would be I don't know. I'd rather maybe go to this team that the Tigers, an up-and-coming team that you can go in there and solidify their bullpen and be the number one closer or be the guy that's counted on. Instead, you sign the contract with the Dodgers and you're well, I may pitch the 6th inning.
It's why we all had this thought that Hiroki Sasaki was going to go to another team besides the Dodgers. We thought he's going to go to the Padres, he's going to go to the Blue Jays, he's going to go to another team that has good pieces, but he's not going to go to the Dodgers because what do you just want to be another name, another number, in this big huge franchise. But I just, the hard part for me is that I think the Dodgers are a team that if you're playing in baseball right now, you want the honor of getting to play on the Dodgers. They are the Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig Yankees that everyone looked back at that time and said, this is history. This team is doing something unprecedented. Now, it's why I go back to the point of if the Dodgers don't win the World Series next year, oh man, there's going to be changes. Dave Roberts might be looking for a job if the Dodgers don't win a World Series next year. That's because that's how much pressure there is on the Dodgers to compete. But they have covered all of their grounds. They have said, you know what? If one of our relievers gets hurt, we've got 5 more that can take his place. If one of our starting pitchers gets hurt, 5 more that can take his place. That's the crazy part about what the Dodgers are, is that they've covered all of their grounds. They've kind of thought of every single scenario that could come up throughout the year. And it's just the crazy part about it. It's why it's a conversation we're having, spending pretty much a show talking about the Dodgers instead of our team that we love, which is the Rockies. It sucks also that we're in the same division as them, which is what we were talking about. But the team that I think is surprising to me a lot throughout this entire process, that it's just completely run into a wall, that it's just completely blown up their offseason, is the Padres. The Padres are a team that, if you remember, almost beat the Dodgers. They were 1 game away from knocking the Dodgers out of the playoffs in the first round last year. I think they would have went on to win a World Series if they had beaten the Dodgers in that game. And they've done nothing. Absolutely nothing. They've lost half their roster. They missed out on Sasaki. They have an ownership battle right now. Their owners are suing each other. The Padres are the ones that should be really feeling the pressure right now. Rockies, it's hey, we're just over here trying to develop our prospects, guys.
Yeah.
Give us a couple more years.
We're just chill guys.
We're just chilling, I'm not worried at all about the Rockies because there's no expectations. The Padres, if I was a Padres fan, I'm in hell right now.
100%. And I maybe it was 3-4 years ago, the Padres had semi-turned themselves, and I think it was maybe due to the ownership change, but the Padres had turned themselves into one of the teams that was spending. And they were spending a ridiculous amount, and they were getting free agents. And the Padres, back 2007, when the Rockies went to the World Series, like the Padres were obviously the team they beat in that tiebreaker wildcard game. But then they had this like lull, and then 2019, 2020, I forget exactly when it was, they all of a sudden were started spending like crazy. And you're like, oh, are the Padres going to be the new Dodgers of this division? And it can flip quickly when you start losing players and you put so much effort, and they're courting Roki Sasaki, if you will, and trying to get him there. And if that pans out, you're like, all right, well, we got this giant fish. But now they're basically in this pond where there's not much left, and they, like you said, were one game away. And in baseball, you can break it down to a few plays away, probably. Going back to those Dodgers games that they could have eliminated the Dodgers, and who knows where the Dodgers go if they don't win the World Series? Do they get all these players? Do
they let go of Dave Roberts?
Yeah, it's crazy how things can just snowball when you're either going in the right direction or the wrong direction.
I got to admit, before we take this break, or this last break, I got to admit, I had so many just dunking on Dodgers like memes and stuff that I was so ready to post that last game. I was one of the most disappointing games when the Padres lost to the Dodgers. And, because I just, as a Dodger hater, it's like, you live for those moments. You spent $700 million on Shohei in the offseason. You deferred all this money. You changed the game of baseball last year, and we're talking about it again this year. And just for them to possibly get bounced in the first round, I mean, it was glory in that moment. And then they, of course, won the game and won the World Series, and then I just deleted all those saved drafts.
All those drafts you had ready to rock.
Yeah, so maybe next year. That's the hope. But I want to, after this break, I want to talk a little bit about this Paul Skenes 1/1 rookie card that came out, because there's been some updates around that, and I think you were on the show when we first talked about this, when the Pirates announced all of the sweepstakes and whatever. So now that all of the decisions have been made, we'll talk about that when we come back. But got to give a shout out to our friends right now over at Breck Distillery. They are the official bourbon whiskey and vodka as well of the Denver Broncos, your 2024 playoff Denver Broncos. And there's a reason why they are the best whiskey in Colorado. I know they have great vodka too, but I love whiskey personally. We've got a nice little setup behind us with some Breck Distillery bourbon.
That rum cask is phenomenal.
It is. I've actually haven't tried their rum. Now I'm kind of curious. I like rum. It's a step below
it's
bourbon,
but it's just in a rum cask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see
so
what
it's
you're
got
saying.
a little note.
I love it.
It's incredible.
That is good. I'd say. So I was going to say. So I like rum, but like a step below bourbon, and so that combination sounds like that would be actually really, really good. Tailgate season's over, but that just because tailgate season's over for us doesn't mean that there aren't still incredible ways you can drink some Breckenridge Distillery bourbon whiskey. Old fashioned season is in. That's personally how I enjoy some Breck Distillery. But whatever you like, Breck Distillery, they've got you covered. They are truly incredible. So use code DNVR at checkout for free shipping on all orders over $99. You can learn more at BreckenridgeDistillery.com. Hey man, we got some events coming up here pretty soon. January 31st, Nuggets watch party. Your incredible, historic Nikola Jokic Denver Nuggets doing what he does best last night. Were you at that game?
I was not.
Oh my God, you missed the
I had
Hail
my
Mary?
tickets, and I wasn't able to make it, but gave
I don't blame you. It's the middle of the week,
Right.
it's throwaway game.
Exactly. But I gave them to a friend who really loves the Nugs, so it was cool to see. Like, I was texting him during the game, and that shot, like everything that guy does, he is the Shohei Ohtani of.
We've made that
basketball.
comparison for sure.
It's incredible. And if Serbia was a bigger country, like Japan is, where like they kind of infiltrate and it's so populated, the NBA wouldn't be dealing with some of the ratings issues that you talked about. Like,
totally,
I guarantee it.
Yeah, I know. He's got all of Serbia on his shoulders. He's got all of us on his shoulders as well. Nikola Jokic is incredible. So be a part of that. Don't miss your opportunities. You're in this golden age where we get to watch Nikola Jokic every single time the Nuggets play basketball, and they're playing on January 31st. So check out that watch party here at the DNVR bar presented by Red Hawk Roofing. Also, February 28th, I know we're a while out from that, but we've got an Avalanche takeover in a suite. It's a top shelf event. Going to be a good time. Tickets go fast. They're playing the Minnesota Wild. So head over to thednvr.com/events for more information on that.
That'll be fun because it's right off the Four Nations break, so we're not going to get any Avalanche hockey for a couple weeks. People will be jonesing, come hang
Ready to
out,
go.
sit in a suite for the Avs game. And this is the first it's released on any pod, which will be released to the public soon. But we have 2 more Nuggets events coming up in March and April. 2 more Nuggets takeovers that will be released probably this weekend. So if you're listening to this, you're getting the first taste of that. They will be on the same website, dnvr.com/events.
Heard it here first. Nuggets are on a roll, man. I'm excited. I'm excited for what they have in store. Speaking of on a roll, there's an 11-year-old who's feeling pretty good about himself. Where does he live, Riley? Where's this kid from? Los Angeles.
Of course,
God
everything's in Los Angeles.
I take everything I just said back.
Why couldn't he be from
Denver?
Nebraska or Wyoming, something cool like
Probably
that.
a Dodgers fan.
Yeah.
God. All right. I hate everything about this now. Some asshole 11-year-old pulled a Paul Skenes 1-of-1 rookie card, and good for him. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. And it just was announced before this show that he decided that he's gonna send that card off to auction. Riley, I was talking to you before this show about this because I had these questions of, I'm not a big card junkie. I know it's a huge thing. Not against anyone who does it. It looks super fun. I just haven't really gotten into that world. So I'd asked you, before the show, why would he take it to auction now? Why would you not wait on it?
Well, the hype kind of dies down, especially with pitchers and the risk of pitchers being injured, Tommy John's, and usually
he's so young too.
He's so young, and he pitched a lot in college, and they had him pitching a lot his rookie year. So people are worried, hey, this is inevitable usually these days. So get your money while you can. Go sell, take the Pirates deal, whatever you're gonna do, but go sell that card for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna get $500,000 at least, maybe more.
At least.
Yeah, and I think it would be cool if he was a Pirates fan and to get that package and suite with Livy Dunn sounds great.
Yeah, it does. I know. She's probably so relieved that it was an 11-year-old.
Yes,
too.
yeah.
Thank God I'm not to deal with some 50-year-old weirdo.
One of those guys that sits outside spring training and berates players when they don't sign his fucking bat that has 50 fucking signatures on it, and he's 45 years old. I hate those guys. I could rant about them. But yeah, it does suck he's not a Pirates fan because that is looking through that whole list of stuff, it's it'd be enticing. Me as a Rockies fan, if that was the same, I'd be I wouldn't say for sure I'd take it, but it would be worth thinking about whoa, I could go to every Rockies game for basically the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I could have these awesome seats, which then, you could maybe turn into selling some of the seats and making more money
you
off
could
that.
make plenty of money off that.
So it just sucks that he's, like you said, probably a Dodgers fan. And getting on that, maybe somebody will buy and give him deferred payments. He can defer it to throughout the rest of his life. He just gets a stipend on January 1st.
I mean, it's what is it? If you win the lottery, you can choose between either getting a lump sum cash, but it's less, or you can get payments. I mean, I don't know. It's whatever. But it's still crazy what the Pirates offered. 2 season tickets behind a home plate for 30 years. That alone is insane. You can see on the screen, this was this kid's journal. This kid was journaling, I guess. And I obviously don't have to read the whole thing. I can barely read it. But just the underlined parts. I started begging my mom for Christmas. He goes on to say, since they are awesome, they got the box. I'm assuming he's talking about his parents. The first present we opened was the hobby box. On the second pack, I got the Paul Skenes redemption card. Nuts. This card is a dream come true. Duh. I mean, you just got yourself a free or, relatively cheap $500K sitting in your bank account.
You want a funny baseball card story? Baseball cards ruined Santa for me.
Really?
When I was a kid, my mom, obviously Santa. If you're out there listening and you're 7 years old, sorry.
Now the Rockies podcast just ruined Santa for some poor kid out there.
But my mom would get us baseball cards. I still have the binders, baseball cards, basketball cards, football cards, and put them in our stockings. And she left the price tag on one of them. And I was like, does Santa shop at Walmart? And that's when it kind of ruined it for me that Santa's not real.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's
of
rough.
fucking pack of baseball cards.
That's terrible, man. That's traumatizing.
Well, the worst part is that conversation then turned into, and I have a little brother, so you generally, if you're an older brother, you try to lead that on for until then that turned into the fucking Easter Bunny being fake, like Cupid, all this shit. It just snowballed into a mess. We were crying.
So you have a very traumatic relationship with baseball cards.
100%.
Yeah. It's just not good for Spencer and baseball cards. Yeah, I mean, this kid has a different relationship for sure. I was trying to figure out like why, and again, Riley and I were talking about this before the show, like why the Pirates were so interested in like investing all of this resources, money, 2 season tickets behind home plate for 30 years. That's an insane investment right there. Meet and greet with Paul Skenes, two autographed jerseys, softball game for 30 at PNC Park with coaching from Pirates alumni, private tours of the park, a suite with Livy Dunn, like all of these things. Like why did the Pirates need this card so much? Do they just want to put it in a trophy case and say like, here it is?
You wonder if they're like, they obviously can see a gigantic internal revenue spike from having Paul Skenes. So maybe they're like using this as like a payback and going to give it back to him or keep it in.
Yeah.
It is a little interesting.
Or maybe they will auction it one day,
like he goes into the Hall of Fame and then they're making, they're thinking
it's a big bet.
20, 30 years down the road and getting themselves but like, it's interesting to hear kind of Riley's take on it just in general. And you think Paul Skenes is going to be potentially a first ballot Hall of Famer, and that's just looking way too quickly. But then also, something we haven't seen Paul Skenes before and actually get into the major leagues and dominate your first year. And but what if he could never pitch again? He could have a bad spring training and turn into who knows, just your everyday pitcher.
The last guy was Steven Strasburg. Everyone was super high on him. Cards were selling like crazy, and then he gets injured 3-4 years in a row, and it's like, okay, well, now what do we do with all this?
Totally.
Yeah,
and
that's a great
Strasburg, Strasburg had so much hype around him. Yeah, he was. I mean, it was like Chris Sale too. Kind of Chris Sale got. I'm not talking about the Cards specifically, but like there was all this hype, and then he just has been battling injuries, and then still somehow this year is like an incredible pitcher. And but yeah, if there was a Rockies version of this, let's say Chase Dollander came in and became Paul Skenes next year, like just as good, started in an All-Star game. I mean, just like same level. Let's just imagine that. And the Rockies announced that they had the same type of situation, exact same sweepstakes, but just with the Colorado Rockies, Coors Field, all of that kind of stuff. If you were to pull the Chase Dollander 1-of-1 rookie card, let's say you pulled that. Are you taking the Rockies deal, or are you selling the card at auction?
I'm strongly considering the Rockies deal for my current life, and who the suite is with, that sweetens the pot a little bit. They better bring out the fucking big guns.
We used to have Cole Tucker and Vanessa Hudgens.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's about as close as you could get.
Yeah.
I don't know who Chase Dollander could bring to the table
suite
there.
with Jennifer Aniston. Maybe I'm thinking about it. I think it's definitely a hard consider. I can't say for sure if I'd take it, but it would be. For me personally, it would be like, that's why I said, like, it was an 11-year-old Pirates fan, just been getting into baseball and starting to love the game, see Paul Skenes and he's your hero. You can't quantify that. Like that would be like at the time, he turned into a nobody, well, kind of, but like a Troy Tulowitzki in 07, you give me that and Tulo, I'm probably like not even considering anything else. Nolan right. Before he became what he became, like that, those two players for me, that would have been a strong consider.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you get a meet and greet, you get softball game for 30 at Coors Field. Can you imagine a like DNVR softball game?
It'd be electric
at Coors Field.
So electric.
That would be so much fun. And then 2 season tickets behind home plate for 30 years. I mean, again, I'm almost 30. You're
31.
31. Okay, like you're 60 years old. That's like most of the rest of you're like. I don't know, young adult life. Young life.
I'd be glad if I make it to 61, to be honest. 61's
not trying to say you're like old if you're 60. You're not at all. But like
getting to 60 would be ideal.
Yeah,
for
but
me.
But like your younger adult life, your middle adult life, you get to have. And the idea that like the Rockies one day are going to be good again, are they ever going to be the Dodgers? It's like, no, but are they going to be good again? Yes, the Rockies are going to be good one day. Within 30 years, that's going to happen. I'd love to be sitting behind home plate when that does happen.
Yeah,
at Coors
game
Field.
1 or game 3 of a World Series behind home plate at Coors Field.
That would go hard.
hit so unbelievally different for me. That might be the last day of my life.
I don't know.
Actually, I have to wait till game 7 was over, but like then I could just probably I'm probably good. I'll make it till as long as the Rockies win World Series, and then I'm good.
God, yeah. I'm hoping the Rockies give us some interesting baseball next year into the month of September. But look, we got to wrap things up on the show. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Rockies Fan Fest is tomorrow. I'm going to be there. We're going to be there hanging out, talking to fans, also going to be talking to some of the players, coaches, all of that kind of stuff. So be sure to follow us on all of your social platforms, DNVR_Rockies. You can follow me as well, DNVR Saez, Saez. It's going to be a good time. I'm hoping to see some of you guys out there. Excited to get a little baseball talk back in our world here in Colorado. So we'll see you guys next time. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Have a good one, and happy weekend.
We all silly like the mayor.